Hello and good evening. I'm Cole, and this is Jay, and this is the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. We continue our series that we recently started on the new Hollywood era, and as we said, hopefully you guys watched the last episode because we did a bit of an intro, not all encompassing or anything like that, but a bit of an intro just to generally say what the era was, or at least how it kicked off and how it started. And last week we did, and their episode was targets, but there's a bit of an intro there, so you can see that. But also we did mention that in addition to doing movies that were, American and part of that era, we were going to do a few of the films that preceded it, influences of it, specifically some of the foreign ones, and this is our first of those. And tonight that would be the Italian/British movie Blowup, which was released in 1966. So just about a year before most people agree the new Hollywood era really started. Most people put the official year as 1967, something like Bonnie and Clyde sort of being the big movie hearkening it's coming. But Blow Up definitely out because of its content and because of the way it was released. You can see how it was just directly influential on a lot of, not just content of films and sort of the philosophical, all that, the content stuff, but also just the way films could be marketed and the way they come out. Last episode, we did briefly mention that since the 30s, Hollywood had sort of been shackled by a rule called the Hays Code, which was basically there to censor films and tell filmmakers, you can't put too much of this or that in a film, all the standard stuff you expect, like sex, violence, anything particularly controversial and stuff. And that sort of held for probably 20-some years. In the early 50s, there were congressional hearings. The Supreme Court ruled that it was, unconstitutional, that, filmmakers were protected by the First Amendment as, freedom of speech and expression, all that. And so you started to see sort of a bit of a loosening where they weren't necessarily as bound by the Hays Code. It was still there, but at the same time, it had lost a lot of its power and stuff, and filmmakers for the most part weren't quite as shackled. They were still, because things take time, it can't happen all at once and stuff. But the things that Blow Up did was the fact that it was not a Hollywood film. First of all, it was a foreign film, but is getting its release in America. It was released by one of the major studios, MGM, and although MGM, I had originally asked the director, Michelangelo Antonio, I say that wrong every time. I keep putting an extra syllable in there. And anyway, I had to cut out some of the stuff that was more controversial, nudity and stuff like that, and he wouldn't budge on. And what they wound up doing was, in sort of flagrant defiance of the Hays, just released it without any rating at all. Sort of really started the death knell for the Hays Code being at all relevant. And 2 years later, in 1968. Oh, really? Oh, God. Okay. And 2 years later, in 1968, the MPAA finally put together their own rating system, which is the basis of what we have now. Told we might be having some technical difficulties, and we might have to briefly stop and perhaps come back, see if we can get through this or not. So
it works fine, and then it goes again.
Okay, I guess I'm cutting out and stuff like that. So try coming out and in again. That's really the best we can do. Sometimes we're just at the mercy of this, but stand by. We'll give it a shot. Sorry, guys.
So I'm going to be here alone to entertain everyone.
Okay. You come up with something to talk about, and I'll try to come back in and see if that improves stuff. Okay.
So was he choppy or what? Did you guys have any problem following what he was saying? I know the last time we did a show when it was like that, it was kind of hard to understand. But yep, this is my first time watching this film from '66. Stand by. Let's see. Michelangelo and Antonioni. That's how I say it. This is his first English-speaking film.
I don't know if it's any better or not. Seemed kind of slow coming, but
About the same.
yeah. Can you or?
We can try.
I mean, if it gets really bad, if
Yeah,
if you're not hearing me, and obviously if you're not, other people aren't either. I guess we would have to maybe postpone it.
Yeah, it seems to be working okay at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll go for it for now. But maybe you managed to reiterate some of the stuff I tried to say.
Sure.
But okay, well, yeah. So Antonioni. I'm saying that wrong every time. Antonioni. No, never mind. He was quite the acclaimed and successful director in Europe, and he was most noted for a film he'd released in 1960 called L'Avventura. Really interesting sort of film. And he actually got his start, I think, doing documentary type films in the late 40s. Never seen any of those, but always interested. Documentaries have been around as long as film has been around, but I still think of them as sort of a modern thing. Like seeing an old documentary, that they're done so differently. So I'd be interested sometimes seeing that. But yeah, L'Avventura is a really cool film that came out in 1960, and we were saying before, it's kind of impressive that this guy who had been doing, Italian language movies over in Europe is now paired up with British people and crew and actors and stuff to do an English language film, and that it all, turned out so well. It was a resounding success, and he would go on to do a couple more English language films that didn't have quite the same impact or reception, but they certainly weren't considered a cool transition that he was able to do that. Well, sometimes gets labeled a thriller, but it's really not. It's supposed to be a thriller. It's really about the storyline, the premise. It's really not a thriller. There's not really anything suspenseful going on in the movie. I mean, here and there, but it's almost kind of like a fake suspense, almost like to, I don't know, sort of screw with the audience a little bit. There's kind of a lot of that going on because the film sort of perception. And, well, it's about a character sort of stepping outside of his usual whatever to, to actually pay attention to something external. Because we're presented with this photographer who's very self-absorbed and really doesn't with anybody else or anything else that's going on. He has his little distractions, but that's all they are. There's like a part where he's goes to an antique store because he sees like a big propeller that he thinks would be cool to have in his apartment because he's got, he's an artiste and he's got all sorts of weird stuff in his apartment and stuff. But it has nothing to do with the plot. Again, it's just part of sort of who he is and one of his little distractions. And yeah, he's a very self-absorbed person, and most of the interactions he has with characters, you know, you can see how he's kind of an off-putting type guy. Like, he's not concerned with other people's wants or their feelings, for that matter, either.
It's a really unlikable character.
Mm-hmm.
And,
something that's kind of ironic about the film is that, like, at the time, it was known for, and people got talking about the sexual content that much by today's standards, and even the nudity, again, is more indirect nudity than, you know, really anything that. But that was really, in the wake of the film being released, that's what was people were talking about, because, again, this was not the norm in film, certainly not in a film scene in America. And what's funny now is, nowadays, that is not what is remarkable about the film, except within the historical context. But what we do note is something that went completely not unnoticed, but unremarked upon, and nobody said anything about, was his sort of terrible regard and treatment of women. He seemed to have a lot of contempt for women. And if you have that sort of character in a film nowadays, that's all everybody's going to be talking about. So it's kind of shows how times and perceptions have changed.
yeah, I mean, it's not like a Bogart type guy. I mean, it seems like he genuinely dislikes women.
Mm-hmm.
And this is David Hemmings playing. He's credited as Tom, but I don't think they ever actually say his name in the film. I don't think.
No, they don't.
I don't think any of the characters ever really are given names, but
yeah, I've like read names in like little write-ups and stuff, and I'm thinking, where did they say it?
yeah,
Because there's something about, like, the girl he meets, they have her being called something, and
Jane, I think.
yeah, Jane, and but they make a point of her not giving her name to him and stuff like that. So I don't know where this stuff comes from exactly, but I mean, that's not unheard of. We've seen plenty of films where they don't necessarily name certain characters.
Or they're credited as like girl and boy, or man and woman, or whatever. You know, something really.
That's how a lot of
vague.
And that's how a lot of the credits work in this film,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything like a specific example, but I'm sure you have too. Like in TV and movies, this might be an early example, but we've often seen photographers portrayed in this way, like male photographers, and like they're just jaded, and the fact that they like have beautiful women around them all the time doesn't mean anything to them anymore. Like they've completely sort of become numb to it, and and as you see, like the photo shoot, he's just sort of moving them around like they're objects, not people.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. I actually thought, like, where did that get started? And maybe it was this film. You know, that type of photographer who's, you know, more, give it more, you know, and, you know, trying to get, you know, the best reactions out of the models and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the same time,
gorgeous, you know, that just dumb, you know, the typical, you know, cliche.
Yeah, and well, I mean, it's played up. I mean, I was going to say, one of the things, you know, the major things about this movie is it's a great snapshot of its time, 1966, set in London, the height of like sort of the mod period, those sorts of fashions and music and stuff like that, but also what often people would like call like the swinging London swinging. And if you think to like the opening scene of Austin Powers, when they're trying to show you swinging London, what they're basically showing you is this, and Austin Powers itself directly parodies the photography stuff, right? You have Austin Powers doing the same thing, like where he's with the camera, it's like, oh, show me, baby, oh yeah. Wow. I mean, it's a direct, basically, parody / homage to that. So at first, like, I didn't even think about that until later, because at first I was just going to say, oh yeah, like the opening, because it starts in 1967 or whatever, they're showing us swinging London with all the music and the fashion and stuff. And I was like, oh, but the photography thing is the same too. In fact, it's probably directly from this movie. Yeah.
And the protesting, the war protests. It's another thing that stood out to me. You know, basically just it is in the time it was made, it very much represents that. You know, all the social elements are in there.
Yeah. And for people that are a little confused by the people at the beginning and the ending of the film, the young people that are like acting like mimes and stuff, and you're just thinking, well, what is that? That is actually like lived in England at the time. Those were university students, and they were doing something which I guess they do or at least they used to do at a certain time of year, where they would just go around and dress up and act weird and stuff like that. But it was actually all in an effort to raise money for charity. At one point, they see him, he was just giving money to them. Well, no, it's like a charity thing. So it's kind of similar, and I mean, we see that kind of thing in universities nowadays, except in a different way. Like the university I went to, I can't remember, it's called Shinorama, where like we had to like go wear stupid t-shirts and like we would like things, but technically they could ask us to do kind of anything, and we do any sort of stupid thing for their amusement if they give us money. So it does harken back to that. So at the beginning and the end, we have like this weird group of young people running around acting like mimes and just do bizarre behavior, and somebody giving them money. That was actually an organized thing. They were university students, and they were doing something for charity. There is actually a term for it, but I don't remember what it was. But they bookend the movie. They're at the opening and the closing. Oh God, if I cut out? I may have frozen. Did I freeze?
It kicked me out.
Oh, okay. So now it's you. Wow.
Yeah, we'll get to the mimes, man. I've got quite a bit to say about the mimes. That's what I was going to say right when I got kicked. But,
okay, yeah. I just said, yeah, they bookend the film. They're there at the start and the beginning. But yeah. But just to let people know, like the premise is okay, that he's this fashion photographer. He's kind of bored with everything he's doing and stuff, and seems to have a lot of contempt and disinterest for everybody around him and stuff. And the thing is, we just get to see some of his regularly kind of just abandons it, and then at one point he's in the park, and since he is a photographer, he decides he's going to take some shots there that don't have any necessarily, and he happens upon this very quiet section of the park, only people, a young woman and an older man, and he starts taking shots of them that he sees. Definitely enjoy your voyeuristic part. You can sort of understand why. Like, he's a photographer, does fashion stuff. It's all within rule. And this is completely free and out of that. And I guess he gets kind of a thrill out of it. Over time, that eventually he finally does print out shots and start looking at them. That he thinks that he sees evidence that perhaps there had been a murder.
Mm-hmm.
That before you saw it, you're watching the scene where he's like hanging up the blown up prints, and you're waiting. You're like, am I going to see it? Where does he see it? And it's so slow and drawn out, which is again sort of the point. And eventually, the stuff he sees, you can't even really tell what it is, and it's so distorted and blurred. The thing is, he's convinced himself that he's seen something, but they make it clear to us as the audience that doesn't necessarily mean anything because we can't make it out ourselves. So it's not like a concrete proof it was a murder.
I think that's what it's all about, is perceptions. Like, because we never see his point of view for any of this, so we don't know if it actually happened or not. So
yeah, exactly. It's like a deliberate choice. Like, you think that they would, swing the camera around his shoulder at that point, but they don't. Make a point of not showing us what he at least thinks he's seeing.
You're so used to that, and like a modern film would definitely swing around and show you the action. You're just waiting for it. It's almost unsatisfying when it doesn't show you what's going on. But it's all part of it. I think it's
it seems a little, yeah. And like I said, if you had some sort of foreknowledge of this before it happens, you're kind of anticipating and you're waiting, and you get the director Antonioni, I think that's right, cutting sort of back and forth between the photos and the photographer, he's like getting closer and looking at them, you know, and it's like, oh, this is maybe going to show you something. And then we get the introduction of the two would-be model girls that had bothered him earlier in the day. And they completely interrupt everything. So they make it's like, wait a second, wait, he's seeing something important. This is a big part of the plot, right? And then they come, and we have this whole diversion of them coming, and we just get a sort of another slice of his life.
Yeah.
One hand, kind of indifferent to, but still at least amused by, like, it's like, oh, you know, and it's still true to this day, you know, I'm sure there's young women, girls out there that really want successful models, and they're willing to go and do that. I'm not saying necessarily sleep with them. They probably come apart and they're going to sleep with him, but still, just the fact that they went to his apartment, because it's not like he asked them to. They tracked him down, because, you know, this is how you work this business. We're going to be proactive. We're going to find them. We're going to convince him. And then, you know, it all just turns into that sort of situation, which, again, for the day was sort of a shocking thing, even though we don't see very much. We just see some sort of playing around. And even though clothes come off, you know, the camera's very deft to keep most things at least partially covered most of the time. As they say, it's very playful as they tumble around, but still, I guess it just still racy enough for the day, because it's implying that, oh, he's gonna have a threesome with two young girls, like, woo, even though we don't really see any of it. We just, and the aftermath, of course, is he wakes up, remembers what he was doing, and kicks them out. Just kind of funny.
Yeah, it's mostly like side boob is the only nudity you get to see. I mean, at the most, you know, it's really funny. I mean, that wouldn't even be considered like artistic now. Like now, you know, full on, you know, a nudity is like just art. So
right, yeah. The original side boob was the first model, Vershka, the German model. People playing herself. She was one of the popular models of the 60s, and so she's the first person he docks to establish that he is sort of higher up on the chain. Like, he's not just some down on his luck photographer. He obviously has good connections and knows some people, which also drives home the fact that, again, is, well, not weird, because it is a very human thing, but he's still sort of dissatisfied with it and detached. And, you know, he's not very happy. In fact, the happiest we see him in taking the shots, because he's finally like in something. Most of the time, he's only half interested, or not. He's looking back and forth. He's trying to figure this puzzle out. He talked earlier when he was talking to his friend, who says a line that sort of alludes to it, because he's talking about being an abstract artist and stuff. He's like, you know, when I start out, I don't even know what it's going to be, but as I go, it comes together into something kind of like, you know, he says something like in a mystery or piece of a puzzle, which is, you know, directly applies to what happens here, whereas he's taken these shots just for the hell of it, but now he's seeing something in them that might actually be, you know, a clue of something bigger or something important, etc. But even before this odd encounter with the two girls, of course, he has the other encounter with the woman he'd been taking the shots of initially. Actually, she immediately goes right after him. Man is nowhere to be seen. Supposedly, perhaps already dead at this point. We don't know. We don't know. Who knows? And you know, irritated that he's taking her photos and demands to have them. Really unreasonable, you know. Some weirdo is just taking pictures of you in the park without your permission. It's understandable you might be upset about that, particularly perhaps a woman being photographed by a man and stuff. So it doesn't seem too weird in that way. But when she does show up at his apartment, then again, they have some very strange interactions. You know, at first she's very guarded. It doesn't take very long for her to let not guard down on him, but just sort of him off around. He's playing music, which is bobbing her head to it. He's like, no, don't do it like that. Just stay still. And then he's like, is there a cigarette? And he tells her the proper way to smoke the cigarette. I get it. It's part of him being the control freak that he is of a photographer. He controls everything and stuff. So he's telling her, because he said something like, oh, you stand well enough for a girl. Let's see how you sit, you know? Instead of being a nice, polite person saying, please sit down, he has to frame it in that way because that's the type of person he is. It's like, well, let's see how you sit. And then he's, you know, again, instructing her. And for whatever reason, she's kind of amused by this and winds up even laughing about it, which is typical. Sometimes you see these characters or things just sort of seem to work out for them. Although that's not how it's always going to go with this guy anyway, as we find out as the film goes on. So, you know,
Right.
it doesn't necessarily have to piss you off. I mean, I guess it still might, because there's plenty of times in movies where you see characters behave in a certain way and you're like, why would you, what kind of reaction is that, you know, and you get a little upset. This movie, I think you have to see it all the way through and then it all kind of clicks. But I certainly under the time you're watching it, just being a little befuddled by some of these characters and the way they're interacting and being like, well, wait a minute, what?
Well,
It's over. It does feel like it would. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that's part of his arc. Like he's, you know, such a, you know, misogynist, and you know, he hates women so much in the beginning, and I think that, you know, he has, you know, the awakening, the epiphany at the end or whatever, and you know, is more in tune with the societal shifts, you know, as far as, you know, equality goes and stuff like that. So maybe
Sure.
that's kind of the way I interpret it.
And she's a little play his game. She even says, like, I know want. She takes her shirt off. I think, oh, creepy. Probably want to get some shit to me now. And yet, then finally too back to do that. And, you know, sends her away. Well, I mean, it's not exactly that willing. She's because, you know, she can that opportunity to steal it. She tries to steal it easily. Foyer's like, well, I saw that come. Both try to trick each other. He gives her the wrong role, but they have some sort of moment where they do kiss, and he thinks they're sick of, and asks for phone number, gives him phone number. They're both playing each other pretty well.
Yeah.
But what's weird about it, like, we don't really know what her reasons for playing him are, and we don't really know what his reasons for playing her are. The film never really tells us exactly, and again, we get to the heart of the matter, which is supposed to be these photographs he took of her that are supposed to indicate a murder. We don't get any sort of confirmation on that level either. The thing they're really only trying to tell us is this is what he has interpreted from the photos, and this is sort of broken his state in a state of sort of ennui. The thing is sort of boring to him, and again, he seems to be fairly successful in a field that he likes, that he's unhappy, which isn't unrealistic. You hear that kind of stuff happens all the time. People want to do, they're reasonably successful, and yet they don't find themselves satisfied. And there's this great part where he's talking to his agent about it, and he says something like, oh, I wish I had money, then I could be free. And you're thinking, free? Like, what's more free than what you're doing? Oh, you have to order beautiful women around and get them into poses you want, and sometimes desperate ones are willing to sleep with you for a break. You know, it sounds pretty free compared to what most people have to do for a living, and yet he's just sort of, again, dissatisfied by it all. Oh my god, am I frozen again? Are you frozen? Are you kicked? I'll keep talking just in case this is still going, but man, this show is turning into a disaster as far as that goes. In case, I don't know. I'll just have to keep talking just in case I am still on and Jay is just going to be coming back. Closest he can get is thinking that perhaps the woman that he photographed in the park is looking at some bushes, and there might be a silent gunman there, and that there is a body on the ground, but it's all very blurry and you can't really tell, and you just have to get the impression that's this, but we're left seeing something sort of blurry. Mm-hmm. Are you there? I can hear you. Okay, yeah, this is getting confusing. Did you get kicked?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. I just sort of, I figured I should just keep talking, because in case, sometimes I don't know if I'm coming through or not, but we're trying to do whatever we can, guys. So at least you guys aren't met with dead air. We're sorry about this. Sometimes, as we've experienced on other shows and stuff we've done, just whether it's Google Plus or connections or whatever, it doesn't want to cooperate, but we'll do our best here. But when he finally starts to become sort of proactive about trying to put together whether or not there was a murder, nothing works out for him. He goes to the scene, and he thinks he hears somebody, and it scares him off. Although he does, in fact, and this is what really makes the movie confusing for a lot of people, including myself, like there is a body, and it is the man that he saw earlier, and he is dead, lying out in the open. Really look for any clues or anything like that. He's scared off. He doesn't have his camera with him. They make a point of him not having the camera there, so he can't take a photo of, here's good proof, there's the body, take a picture, like a non-blurry photo of the body, so he doesn't have that. And he goes back, and then I'm skipping ahead here a bit, but later when he's actually trying to tell people about it, and this is another big part of the movie, and I think it's just supposed to express kind of how lost he is, and again, this sort of detached life he has, is that a big thing is sort of failure to communicate. He can't tell them. Every time he tries to express to the people, tell them about it, it doesn't work. It doesn't click. And you'll see a couple times he just sort of in frustration gives up because nothing he's saying is getting through. Either nobody believes him or they don't understand him or whatever. But the fact is he's not successfully communicating at all. And he just sort of has to give in. But of course, all before that, we get a little bit of sort of the Hitchcockian type thriller part is when he does see the mysterious girl one more time. And I don't even know what the camera effect is. I backed it up a bunch of times. But he sees her sort of in a crowd, and then she just sort of turns. And I backed that up and froze it and looked at it, and I don't know how they did it, really. But it's almost like she turns into another person. If you watch it enough times, it's like her legs are here and her torso's here, and then suddenly the torso becomes somebody else's torso, and then it's just another person. I don't know, but it's a really great effect, making her just disappear. And this leads him down where he thinks he's gone to this alley, which leads to the club, which leads to my famous scene of the Yardbirds playing to a crowd. And this is, again, not really an important part of the plot. It's not, but it's just to set London, so it would make perfect sense for the Yardbirds to be there. They were just.
I wasn't sure what band that was.
They were just becoming popular too. This is after Eric Clapton had left, but Eric Clapton, to be fair, didn't really have any success or fame when Eric Clapton was there. It was after Jeff Beck replaced him. So we get the lineup of the guitarists now are Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page. He's playing that cool hard riff. And that is Jeff Beck who smashes his guitar in frustration when the feedback isn't working.
Okay.
And originally, when they were shooting the scenes, before they knew if they could get a famous band, they had some band, I don't know who they were, but they were the house band for that club. It was a real club. So they were using them to rehearse. And because at first they thought, oh, we won't be able to get any band. Like they wanted to get, I think, Sound or something, couldn't get them. Wanted to get somebody else, couldn't get them. So they were just rehearsing it with this other band. Then what happened was, of course, they did get the Yardbirds, which is great. But Jeff Beck did not want to smash his own guitar, so he actually smashes the guitar of the poor guy in the other band.
Oh.
Yeah, because he's thinking, because the director had told him, he's like, I want you to smash the guitar, like Pete Townsend in The Who does. And he's like, I'm not smashing my guitar. It's like, don't you have like a prop guitar? It's like, use this guy's guitar. So the poor band that had been rehearsing and thought maybe they were going to get the gig and how it had been pushed out, now the guitarist has to give up his guitar to have Jeff Beck smash it.
So that was a thing prior to this film being made?
The Who.
Smashing? Yeah.
The Who had popularized it within maybe a year or two earlier. Like it was a hip, cool thing. Yeah. That was what he wanted. He wanted him to smash it the way Pete Townsend did. As far as I know, Pete Townsend was the first guitarist in like at least a really notable band to do it. Maybe he's not the first ever, but he's the first in a band that like people really knew and recognized. And it's a cool song. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got like a really cool heavy riff, which is really different again for 1966. That sort of riff, and it's sort of it's a good harbinger of the heavier riffs that would come in the later 60s and stuff.
Stroll On, I believe, is the name of that track.
Right. And the specific cut of that performance is on the film soundtrack, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
but it's a very raw song, because I think years before I saw the movie, when I heard about that scene, I pictured something, again, because this is very close, swinging London would sort of turn into like psychedelic London. And I pictured much a more psychedelic scene, but this is before that. You know, this isn't incense peppermints. You know, this is the Yardbirds getting raw. I always thought the Yardbirds were a cool, underrated band. You know, when we talked about the New Hollywood movement and how obviously it was the '60s, and we talked about, well, one of the big culture, of course, was the British invasion. You know, led by the Beatles, but
Right.
so many other British bands that would follow, like Dave Clark 5, of course, Birds. So it's cool that they're in there for that too, because you can see this hitting the American public, just where all these British bands are totally cool and totally in, you know. So it stylistically made the movie very appealing, I think, and it's another reason for its success, because it was at a time where it was fascinated by all sorts of British pop culture.
Yeah.
Like every little thing they heard, they thought was cool, and they would start talking about, you know, the Beatles would talk about the fan mail they would get from you know, the teenagers and stuff like that, and they'd be fascinated by every little thing, because it's like, oh, we call fries chips, and we call an elevator a lift, and they're all like, oh, it's so cool, like blew all the American teenagers' minds. They just thought it was so cool, and said some things slightly differently and stuff. So yeah, so I think having the Yardbirds in the film definitely helped it a lot too, for that whole image of that fascination the American public, or at least the American youth, had with the British pop culture and music and stuff. But Jimmy Page, of course, would go on to a lot bigger fame and success with Led Zeppelin.
The Illuminati.
But I always thought the Yardbirds, even though they were only together for a few short years and only released, I think, 4 albums, one of which was just a live album of like cover songs, they were pretty cool. I don't know, when they did that sort of like rhythm and blues style, I think they did it better than the Stones, but that's just me being the musical snob that I can be sometimes. I just thought I'd work that in.
Yeah, I feel kind of stupid. I'm not very familiar with their work. I need to go look that up.
Yeah, they didn't like have a lot of hits that got like play on American radio at the time. Like nowadays, you'll hear them on like a classic rock station, but it's more like because it's a cool thing. It's not because they were ever really big. Like, as I said, but this whole British invasion thing goes, they weren't one of the major ones. They were just more of a footnote because of the fact that at one point they had two. Well, not at one point. They never had all 3 together, but they had 3 guitarists among the best guitarist of all time.
That's what I was going to say. I didn't know Eric Clapton was
makes
in
people
there.
remember them. Well, again, Eric Clapton was only there at the start, and he left once he thought they were getting too far away from the stuff, because he was so tourist about that. Do you think he goes to form Cream, and Cream is all psychic, you know? But
I was about to ask, was this before Cream? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this would have been just when he was probably joining and forming Cream just around the time this came out, probably. He left, formed in '63, and I think he was out of there by like '65 at the latest. And yeah, so the classic lineup they're best known for is Jeff Beck, not Tim, but obviously Clapton's a bigger name because of what you do later on.
Yeah.
Like I said, as I always heard of them having a scene where they played a song, it's not the song I expected, it's really the tone I really like it. It's cool, and I like it. It's all just like stoned and just standing motionless. There's only like a couple people dancing, but most of them are just
weird,
like,
man.
You know,
that was really weird.
It's like you know, the band is rocking out, they're moving around, they're doing nothing, you know, everybody else is just like motionless, staring forward. And what wakes them up is when Jeff Beck smashes the guitar and throws a fight over it, and who emerges with it? Well, our photographer. And you're thinking, why? This has nothing to do with anything. And it's again another one of his weird little things, fighting people off to keep it. Then once he gets outside, he's like, huh? And he just tosses it aside. It's like he just like came out of a dream. Why would I do that?
Well, I mean, what was the point of everyone being so in the zombie state when they were in there, just, you know, zoned out? The people.
That I do not know.
I mean, it's like they were just watching. They weren't really engaging at all.
Yeah. No, I find that very odd too, because that doesn't really fly with anything I knew about like English crowds at the time. You know, they're just like anybody else. They'd rock out, they'd bounce around.
Yeah.
Don't really know what the direction is there. He's like, I want you all to just stare motionless, except I guess for the better effect of everybody freaking out when he throws the guitar in. So it seems like I don't know. So that seems more important because, you know, standing there, but then once the guitar gets thrown, they all freak out. I don't know. Very odd to me too. I'm with you on that. Yeah, so comes out of there. It's like he's come out of a bit of a daze, and he's remembered what he's supposed to be doing stuff, and completely defeated. He goes back to his apartment. Everything's torn up. So there's all these little things that suggest, yes, there is something to this, but there's no payoff for any of it. When he meets his agent for lunch right after thing, before he, you know, he's taken anything perhaps suspicious, you know, there's a guy looking around at his car, and that's not followed up on. And then, yeah, he comes back to the apartment, and it seems like it's been ransacked, and he's lost the photos and whatever proof he might have. People be like, oh, at least I could show them the photos, but now he doesn't have the photos. So, I mean, the movie's progression of he's just sort of, but I get what they're doing. Like, it's interesting because, like I said, he's living this sort of like weird, dissatisfied life on me, and nothing really gets him interested. For the first time, like, gets him engaged, and he cares, and he's trying to do something about it, and he just sort of fades away. It literally happens. Like, he fades. So yeah, it's it's pretty weird. So people going in expecting a thriller are just going to be payoff as far as that goes. There's not going to, if there's a mystery, it's not being solved or anything like that. So I can see how people could get frustrated with it if they had those sorts of preconceptions going. Like, that's what I did. I saw the movie years ago.
I mean, it goes against the grain in every aspect of storytelling. I mean, nothing gets resolved. You know, nothing is really, you know, it's virtually all meaningless. Right? I mean, the whole plot of the film means nothing. I mean, you never know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, whether there was a murder or not. No, you're not. Like, whether there was a murder or not really isn't the point. That's, you know, could be off-putting to people. Because we see somebody who's sort of at a low end where nothing seems to interest him or make him care, and then finally something has roused him to action, and we see him approach something even sort of, you know, kind of like passion. And again, we see the closest he comes to that is when he's hanging up the blow-ups and looking at them. You know, he's finally engaged. He's finally, it seems like his love of being a photographer has come back, and yet then it all sort of, it's like air being let out of a balloon, as like he sort of runs around and can't get any sort of confirmation. He can't get any sort of help. He's just sort of left defeated and just sort of drifts out. And I don't know, because I haven't seen up in Antonioni. I guess it was a bit of his nature of his to have characters sort of literally disappear. That he likes that. There's some sort of allusion to Shakespeare. I can't remember. I mean, I remember the Tempest, but I can't remember the ends of it. But there's a part in Tempest where Prospero says something like how everybody involved were actors or they were spirits, and they all met in the air. Sort of the exit stage after we're at the end of that play. And Antonio, no, I can't do it. Every time I do it, I add up too many syllables. But anyway, he sort of insisted that was like part of his like signature, to treat it the same way, as if that nothing we've seen is necessarily real. It's kind of like a play being put on, and
Sure.
he just moves stuff out.
Yeah, I'm not like immediately opposed to that. I really like experimental filmmaking quite a bit.
Right.
But I can see how a lot of people would have been put off by that when this film was released.
Mm-hmm. Well, what puts me off about it is just the inconsistency of it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't mind if you go that way, but there's some weird, like him actually finding the body, seems like some sort of incongruity. The fact that when he comes back to his apartment and it's messed up, again, I don't get that, because there's parts of the film where you could say, okay, he's just sort of imagining it. Like, he's so bored, he's so, whatever, that suddenly he's reading things into stuff that isn't there, and he's imagining things. But then you get this other stuff, and it's like, well, are we supposed to believe he's imagining that? And, I'm sure the director would say, well, you can believe that. It's like, what kind of answer is, but I understand. It feels like an inconsistency. And,
you know what it's like? It's very like, what David Lynch does with a lot of his stuff. It's where there is like no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, it's true, because David Lynch, as we said when we were doing stuff with Mulholland Drive, where it's like, oh, dream. It makes it like, okay, so that's a dream in a dream. Like, okay, but that person witnessed it, but that person did too. So they both saw it? So that meant it definitely happened. It's like, not necessarily. And it kind of feels like some of that's going on in Blowup, where it's like I said, where it's like, okay, we're reading into this that he's just a perception. He's, at whatever circumstance, he's seeing things that aren't there. He's believing something that didn't happen, or he's misinterpreting events that he saw just to make something more interesting for himself. That all seems to have this other stuff coming in. You're like, well, wait a minute. That seems to suggest that he is right. So, yeah, but and a certain audience must have been frustrated or upset with it. It was really well received. It made a lot of money. It was very popular. Probably, again, for the stuff, the stylistic stuff, the fact that it had some sexual content in there that hadn't really been seen before, giving all this stuff about swinging London and having that whole feel and look to it, was very appealing to people, like I said, particularly at that time in the U.S. with the fascination of sort of all things British, too. So yeah, it did really well. And speaking of thrillers, like Alfred Hitchcock really liked it. Here's a quote he has. I don't know if this is a whole quote, but my God, I've just seen Michelangelo Antonioni's Blowup. These Italian directors are a century ahead of me in terms of technique. What have I been doing all this time? So Hitchcock actually saw it and thought, I wish I had thought of this, which is kind of cool when you think about it.
It feels like a Hitchcock film in a lot of parts, doesn't it?
Right. It does.
It's very similar to his style, I thought.
I think so too, and that's where you can sort of get the misnomer thriller, right? It's almost like it's posing as a Hitchcock film when all really it is sort of an art house film to get some sort of stylistic stuff across. Mm-hmm. But I like the actor. He plays a very convincing sort of not necessarily narcissistic, but definitely self-absorbed type of photographer. He seems to, like you said, it's almost set the template for that sort of photographer who's like unmoved by the glamour of his profession, and where he's working with beautiful women and stuff like that, but he just sort of sees them as objects to move around, and he doesn't care about their feelings or anything like that. And even when he has like beautiful women perhaps throwing themselves at him, he can take advantage of it if he wants, but he can also totally be almost immune to it, where he can just be like, no, not interested right now, and you can almost get that when you feel like, it's like, oh, these two girls in the apartment, this is a once in a lifetime thing. Well, not necessarily for him. And even he sort of at least gives into the moment at the time, because you think maybe when they start tearing down his backdrop, he's going to get mad. But he's like, no, this is proper context. These are two young girls. I've got them like half naked running around. I'm not gonna come down on them about knocking some background stuff down. I'm gonna go at the moment. But I just love that, because it's just such this weird diversion. Like it's done so deliberately, because right what we think is the heart of the film. He's looking at the blow-ups. He's seeing something in there, but we don't see it. But it's like, okay, any second now, sees this is gonna come together. And then they come in and interrupt the whole thing. And I think it's funny. It's very interesting, like you said, it flies in the favor of a normal narrative.
Yeah.
Why somebody like Hitchcock would admire, because Hitchcock, though Hitchcock still, as much as you admire, I still think he had more of a sense of fair play Like, as much as Hitchcock, I think, idea of subverting the audience's expectations, and he, screwing with them or giving something they're not prepared for. I think it was still ingrained Hitchcock because of the films he made in the past. That he still didn't go too far in that direction. Like I think he did have that sort of fair play, because even in his later films, they didn't get too bad. They're still kind of the same idea, like or something like that. And sure, it's a little stylistically different, but as far as the narrative goes, it's not playing tricks the way like David Lynch would or anything like that. So
Right.
He knows what he is. Octavian is, of course, the biggest imitator of all, Brian De Palma. Brian De Palma, who already, aped Hitchcock and everything he did. And, you watch Body Double, and Body Double is basically his version of Vertigo. Well, Blowout is basically his version of Blowup, where the whole idea is, instead of somebody thinking they saw a murder or something because of a photograph, but this was with sound, with a recording. And that was part of the dark period where nobody knew who the hell John Travolta was, where he was like successful in the 70s and then did a bunch of junk in the 80s that nobody saw. And
it's a great movie, though. I love that movie.
I can't. I don't dislike it, but I don't like it either. I don't know. And again, I just feel like it's just like this weird, poor imitation of Blow Up.
I'm not going to disagree that he is an imitator, but he's usually a pretty damn good imitator. Like, as far
I
as,
mean, I like De Palma 90% of the time, but that one is not one that works for me at all. I mean,
you could say Quentin Tarantino is an imitator.
Absolutely, he is.
So.
But at least he's honest about it and stuff. And I mean, it's true. And I pick and choose too, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, that's not original.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't like it. And then there's other stuff where I'm like, well, I know it's not necessarily original, but I like the way they do it and stuff. Like
you could take it and kind of put your own spin on it, which is what Tarantino does, which I think kind of excuses it. It's not directly aping somebody else's stuff.
Like, I mean, I get that's why, like, a lot of people like that show Stranger Things. Stranger Things, if you step back and look at it, several people liked kind of a new presentation because it's well done. So, so I'm not one of those people that would attack it and be like, oh, it's just imitators. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with imitation if I think it's good imitation. And I think the Tama usually is pretty good. Blowout, no, and I really wish it wasn't John Travolta. Stand in that movie. It has a really cool ending, the whole thing with screaming and stuff. That's a cool ending. I'll give it that.
Have you seen The Conversation?
Yeah, and this movie again was sort of a direct influence on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually just saw that fairly recently,
sure.
And I didn't realize that it was inspired by Blow Up.
Quite a few was sort of have a lot to do with the whole idea of being a witness or something, or being privy to something you're not supposed to be. Voyeurism there. That's what I meant, voyeurism. Like I said, and that's what's kind of cool about his characters. We see that's the one time he sort of gets engaged again. Is instead of being like the standard photographer moving the models around and telling him stuff, here he is out in the park and he's free and he's a voyeur, and his camera, he's going to do what he wants. These people are off and they don't know what he's doing and stuff. And he has, just such a calm and cool response to her. She's coming up and, demanding all this stuff. And he's just like, and she's like, that could cause a lot of trouble for me or something like that. And he's like, oh, well, sometimes that's for the best, is what he says. Yeah,
he was absolutely enjoying that, though.
Yeah.
He was having a great time.
Yeah, for sure. But the film, again, I think is really important with the New Hollywood movement. It did a lot for cinematic, for artistic freedom. The MPAA versus the Hays Code is easily the big example. Like I said, within less than a year's time, you would see some of that being used in a film like Bonnie and Clyde, which of course had its own heaps of violence to go along with it too, to people and stuff. But there's quite a few films from the early to mid 60s, foreign films that were influence this movement and stuff. And I don't think Blow Up is necessarily one that comes to mind for a lot of people, because one thing, it's actually an English language movie. movie, although it is by a foreign director, an Italian guy. But it's kind of understand the context because of what we see nowadays to really think, oh, really that much nudity? People were like, freaking out about that, and that was a big deal. But it was a big deal.
Was it? I mean,
like I said, it hinted at like the idea that he was going to have a threesome. That was
Right.
pretty naughty stuff. Even though they show it in kind of the most
a,
innocent and playful way. Sorry, I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is a British film, right? So technically, like in Europe, they were probably much more, okay with the nudity rather than the American audience.
Right, and this is
I'm sure it was more
one of the films that started to work on start to break things. Because before the New Hollywood, there was already like more nudity and stuff like that, but in the foreign films, breaking down the door and getting, it's not like some of these American filmmakers didn't want to have that stuff. That the hands were tied, that they wouldn't be able to get the go-ahead. But as these films gained in popularity and influence and stuff, the writing was on the wall. As we said, the Hays Code was already dying a slow death anyway. It was less and less relevant. This film made it almost completely irrelevant, and within 2 days, influenced the rating system, which is by no means perfect, but preceded it.
Society was changing, and rapidly in many different areas. So, it was, destined to be, done away with anyway. But you can't really argue because the MPAA is much better.
As I said, there's just so many changes in the 60s going on. Almost any sort of major topic you can think of was undergoing some sort of change. And one of the revolutions of the 60s was the sexual revolution, where finally people were being more open about it. Sex wasn't something from behind closed doors that nobody talked about. It was something you could actually talk about, or you could just be more honest about. Like, only a few short years before that, if a girl said like that, she'd had sex with, I don't know, 2 or 3 men or something at some point, be like, what, harlot? Or even the idea of having relations, outside of marriage. It's not like that stuff didn't go on, but it wasn't talked about. And finally, the 60s was starting seeing that break down, where it's like, well, let's at least start being honest with ourselves and stuff. And like I said, the main part of the sexual revolution were the people saying, sex isn't bad. Sex is good. It's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It should be celebrated and it should be expressed. And you see where that went. And what comes into the 70s? Porn. So
there we go.
It's all a rich tapestry.
It always leads back to porn too.
Absolutely. I bet you there's a porn version of Blowup out there. It has such an enticing title.
Oh man, I saw the stupidest porn parody the other day. What was it? There's some dumb stuff.
I'm no expert on porn because I just, I it's not like I watch like the full like that. I'm like the normal, person today, where it's like, well, why do you need these full movies? There's just clips and stuff all over, stuff like that. But I never understood the appeal of full movies, why they were so popular. But that's really the big thing, and it's even in a porno. He's like, when I was a kid, my favorite ones were the parodies. I thought they were ridiculous, awful. I get it. I get to a certain extent. Yes, you see Star Wars. It's like, oh, really? You got to see Leia or whatever. So this is the next best thing. I get it to that point, but I guess I'm a cinema fan and porn fan in that even though it's kind of cool fulfillment, it's so crappy, schlocky. I kind of just wish it didn't exist anyway. It's like, you know what? I'd rather just have my own idea, my own fantasy of, Leia getting down and dirty instead of seeing some poor, shitty, terrible imitation done in, the Valley in California there or whatever. But, I'm not trying to come down too hard on porn. It serves its purpose.
I agree with you, though. On the parodies.
But, can you remember what this parody was? I got you off track. You said there was
I can't remember what it was. It was just ridiculous. The subject matter. I know there was a lot of stuff around the election,
Man.
That always seems to stimulate that.
Probably the best and worst things about those parodies of the porn is like when it's always based on something where you have the obvious characters. It's like, oh yes, this is the wish fulfillment. We want to see this male lead and this female lead. The two females, and all that. But there's always that part where it's like the side characters or the characters that no one ever thought were attractive, but the porn still manages to give them sex scenes too, because damn it, they need it. Like there was that 70s show porn that I saw at least some of, and like they had to have a scene where like I didn't kitty or whatever. I mean, yes, they are porn actors and they're more attractive than their counterparts in the show, but still at the same time, I'm just thinking it's something everybody knows when they're watching the show. Like they wanted to see this. I don't know. What was hilarious about that was like, and it kind of shows the racism of the porn industry, was that how they had Fez, and the whole point of Fez was he's foreign, but nobody knew what he was. The Fez character was obviously played by a white guy, but to hide it, they tied in this thing that they were like backstage at a Kiss concert, so he had like the Kiss makeup on, and they were supposed to be like fucking like with Kiss groupies and stuff like that. So they just made him fake an accent and have Kiss makeup on, but it was clear just some white guy. It's like you couldn't like find one like brown porn actor. Yeah,
I was going to ask if he had the accent.
Yeah, really bad, like really bad. Their whole time, like sometimes he would forget it.
Here's a gay porn called "Everybody Does Raymond."
Everybody loves coming up with those titles and stuff. I don't know. I'm a little sick of them, and I don't even just this one, just any sort of pun type thing, because we've gotten to a point where like it doesn't even really make sense. Like I know I'm getting way off the topic here, but I'll look on the TV guide. These are shows I wouldn't watch anyway because I hate all reality shows because they're all garbage to me. But like reality shows just all have like pun names based on non-reality shows. Like there was a show called Game of Arms that was about arm wrestling. A show that had some sort of like zombie name in its title, and it was about house hunting. And like I'm blanking, but there were like 4 or 5, and they were all puns based on real shows.
Yeah.
But used for reality shows.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I mean, some of them are just so hard to get. Oh yeah, there was one called this isn't from a show. Oh, what was it? Oh man. But anyway, it was some sort of, it was a Food Network show, or not Food Network, but it was a food show, and I can't remember what the word was, but it was Traveler, and it was supposed to rhyme with Blues Traveler. Oh, it was Booze Traveler. It was about alcohol. It's called Booze Traveler. You watch it and go, oh yeah, like that band from the 90s. Like,
I mean, would people know that though? I mean, who even remembers Blues Traveler?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like, it's such a reach. They're like, because they that's what I mean. They're making a show about going from different place to different place to sample alcohol, and just giving it a normal title. Like, it has to be some sort of fun. They reach as far down as again. Oh, remember that band Blues Traveler? Not really. Pulls up. Oh yeah, I kind of remember them. We call it Booze Traveler. It's like, that's catchy, except no one, but they go with it. But we're way off topic, but it's funny. But speaking of like film, besides the actor Verushka and the band, the cameo, but it is an Asian actress is in there. She's a very small role. She plays this receptionist, but that's Asian actress. Her name is Sai Chin, and just after that, she would go on to some fame because she would be in You Only Live Twice, the Bond film over in Japan, and she had a very long career, the actress, and I guess got a little more recognition because she's one of the main characters in the Look Club in the 90s. So just kind of cool. Like, I didn't know it was her because I'm really bad with faces anyway, but I was just like, I bet she's somebody because she's an Asian woman in a 60s movie, and there's not many of those. I looked her up and I was like, oh shit, yeah, it is her from
that, that's kind of the way I was in Targets. His receptionist or whatever you would call his assistant was Asian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And you thought of that. the film was, it was what was hip and it was what was cool. It hit at the right time. It was called like a mod masterpiece, and people loved the style and stuff. So, moviegoers that either didn't get it or didn't want to get it or felt kind of annoyed by the narrative, but it was just wrapped in such a cool package that it did very well, not just with critics but with audiences. It made a ton of money. It made over $20 million, which is like making over $100 million nowadays, and had a very small budget. And it got played all over the place and stuff, and it helped get please say his name right, Antonioni. You get him some recognition over here and stuff. So it was a big success that a lot of people really liked. It's funny, we were talking about Ingmar Bergman before the show. I guess I read here that he generally didn't like him, but he acknowledges and he says like that this was his other masterpiece besides L'Avventura. So that's pretty high praise from somebody like Ingmar Bergman, who wasn't into that kind of stuff. I guess I don't really know what they meant by not liking his films, but who knows? But yeah, it's pretty important to get his high praise. It's funny, like when people are like naming like the best directors, he's always like at least top 3. Like
sure.
And people just love him so much. Like, it's funny. Like, people think so highly of Kubrick, and it's so funny. Like, you can find it on the internet if you look it up. Like, there's this letter that Kubrick wrote to Ingmar Bergman, like in the 70s, to tell him how much he loved his movies. And he sounds like such a pathetic fanboy. It's hilarious. Like, he just sounds like he's just like worshiping at Ingmar Bergman's altar. Like he has like no dignity at all. Like, he's not even saying anything about being like a good filmmaker. He's just like, your films are so amazing. Like, it's like, I'm actually embarrassed. I was embarrassed for him reading it.
Well, he didn't intend for anyone but him to read that.
Yeah, so. I know. Like I said, I did feel embarrassed. It's kind of too bad.
Yeah. No, he's dead, and there's quite a few of those. I'm guessing he wrote a lot of letters. There's one he wrote to one of the studios. Oh man, I forget who it was, but God, he just ripped him a new one. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was just hilarious.
Production for an old show. Also, apparently, was the inspiration video to the classic Seal song "Kiss from a Rose." But I've only seen the Batman Forever. No, there was a separate video, but apparently there is, and I'll have to look it up, and I guess it takes cues from that. Unless they mean that the Batman Forever ones has some sort of, maybe there is only one. Maybe all I remember is scenes of Batman and Robin bouncing around. Well, Steel sings in a void or whatever. I'll have to watch it again. Great favorite of yours. Apparently the video took some inspiration from this film. So.
The video for Kiss from a Rose?
Yeah, that's what I'm reading on Wikipedia here down at the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah, oh yes, the original video. So apparently there was an original video in Forever I've ever seen.
So that song was not made for the movie. They just put it on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And shot that garbage music video that they shot.
Yeah. Batman's Forever soundtrack. What's funny is the Batman and Robin, the horror movie, it has some good track. It has a Goo Goo Dolls song I really like. Goo Goo Dolls. The album's called Lazy Eye. I really like that song.
I think U2 may have been on that one too.
I'm not a big U2 fan, but it's a U2 song I particularly like. Something Kiss Me, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, that's a cool song. Yeah, I actually liked my favorite U2 is like their like weirdness, to tell you the truth. I'm a big U2 fan, but them as like Mysterious Ways, which is like really far off their normal sound. Like that is not what they're most. I always really like that song.
Anything past like 95, I don't care for.
I never understood the 2001 album was huge. I thought it was crap, man. A Beautiful Day. I couldn't stand anything on that album, and that was the thing. Like the 90s, they were kind of slipping, and 2001 was kind of like U2 are back. Yeah. I was like, I really, and I've heard all the songs on that album, not just like the singles, and I don't like any of it. But and I think it wasn't that album. But an album later, they had a song where like they totally rip off a song by Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Really?
It has like the exact same tune. Yeah, that what is it? Get out my life, why don't you, babe? Blah 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 blah. There's something, babe. Because you don't really love me. You just keep me hanging on. Like there's a U2 song that basically has that tune.
Wow.
But nobody calls them out on it because they're rock gods, apparently. And I'll take the Yardbirds over U2, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. But well, so I guess you want to get to the mimes, and we can go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, sure. What did you have to say about the mimes?
Well, I mean,
I tried my best to explain who they were and what they were doing and how it actually did make sense.
But you were saying like that's what the mimes actually were from the university, right?
Yeah, they're doing a thing.
Okay.
Collecting money because it's like I said, it's a thing, get money for charity.
Okay. Do you think that's at the end too? That was the purpose for the tennis match?
Well, at the end, it's a little weird because it's clear that they're just enjoying themselves because they're not there. They're by themselves to get money from. There's nobody there to do a performance for. It's like they've gotten really into it now, and now they're just going to amuse themselves. Which I guess, yes, is taking a little far, but it is a movie, so I don't mind. But yes.
Okay. So it's
tennis. You want to know about tennis?
It's like a solid 12 minutes of mime tennis, and it gets really intense. Like there's spectators that get hit with mime balls, and
they're just trying
the fence and
to show how it's the whole perception thing, right? They're showing I created this false reality, and they've gotten really into it. And in the end, he gets into it because he starts to hear the sounds.
Right.
And
but
remember,
he picked up the tennis ball that was apparently hit out of the court.
Yeah, and tossed it back to them.
And that's when he started hearing the actual.
Yeah. It was, I don't really know. It doesn't make any sort of definitive statement, but I just think it has to do with the whole perception thing again. It's almost like he's latched onto something and now he's going to drift away from it, just like he did before. I don't know. It's an odd thing, but I mean, it's kind of fitting. Yeah. I mean, it's an odd movie, so it works. Sure. But yeah, it is a little dragged out. I'll give you that. It goes on a bit long. I mean, I get that they're trying to immerse us. They're trying to show us that they're really committed, and but I think it is a little drawn out. I'll give you that for sure.
Like, I would like to watch my dad watching this movie when it came out. He would have been 20 when it came out. Like, it would blow his fucking mind. Like, he wouldn't be able to understand the damn thing that's going on. He would be pissed off.
No, my dad'd be like, "Why aren't they shooting somebody?"
Yeah.
No, my dad wants them to shoot people. My dad has no patience for long narratives.
Oh, really?
No.
Well, it really is no narrative though.
No. That's what I mean. Like, even if you have a completely straightforward narrative, if it's too long, my dad will lose interest.
Oh.
I'm not a TV show person, but he's even less of one because you cannot expect him to watch something from episode to episode. Like, that's way too much commitment for him. Because there's plenty of shows that I know that he would like on the surface. I always thought he would like Deadwood.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Deadwood's just too involved.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like my dad's not an intelligent man. It's just that's not how he chooses to absorb. That's not how he chooses to absorb entertainment, I guess. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I get it.
Well, a lot of television shows are, they're almost like little condensed stories that you can watch every week.
And I think that's what he prefers, that kind of thing. And a lot of people do. And I understand that. I've always felt television got better once it started following the longer stuff the comics did, but that's a chicken and egg thing for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of shows now especially get bogged down by that, set number of episodes or, whatever contracts they sign into. Like a show like Westworld, for instance. I know you watched that one. And that show got renewed for 7 more seasons or something ridiculous like that. And I just can't see
I really enjoyed it, but I thought it should have been one and done. I think it said everything it needed to say in the first season. I thought, good, powerful, interesting, good, but let's not drag it out. I thought one and done would be great, but nothing's one and done if it does well anymore.
No, and that's so sad. Like the Brits still do that.
Yeah, they still do that.
Like
they'll
BBC,
they'll 1 or 2 series, and they're like, okay, it's done.
I mean, no matter who loves it, how popular it is, that's it. It's 2 series of 6 episodes, and it's out. And I love that because it really makes it that much more special.
And the quality doesn't dip.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to see it do that. Because even like my favorite shows, like the ones I really like 90% of them, I have to say, once it got to a certain point, it dipped and, would have been better off without that happening.
I think it's, like Seinfeld, for instance, I'm a big fan of Seinfeld.
Was that 10 seasons?
I don't think it was quite that many, but it ended, in the height of its popularity. That show would probably still be on now if Jerry Seinfeld wanted to continue.
Mm-hmm.
It was so popular. But
and that's sort of sad. Like, it took somebody, like, it was only because Jerry Seinfeld was who he was so powerful that he could end it. Like, a lot of people, they're just not in a position to do that.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, I want to walk away from the show. They're like, you can walk away from the show, and we'll replace you.
Well, just just think about all the supporting cast, that was getting regular paychecks off that show, and he chooses to end it because he wants more time with his family or what the fuck ever. I mean,
I'm a little disappointed in his output since then. I thought he'd do a bit more. I'm not a huge Seinfeld fan, but I like him. I would have liked to have seen him, if he had more time, do more stuff. I like a lot of his stuff. B-movie was okay, but okay, do some more stuff.
No, I'm not going to include that in there.
Yeah, I liked it fine. I mean, it wasn't a masterpiece.
Comedian quite a bit. I liked his latest stand-up has been really good.
I haven't seen
it. In Cars, Getting Coffee. I don't know if you've watched that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes of that. That's funny.
That's a really good show. It's been on forever, too.
Yeah, I've only seen the early stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go on my people who watch The Sausage Factory have heard me like rant about why I don't think TV is suited for these things and not, and I could go back and forth with Eric because Eric thinks it's the best medium, and maybe it is. I don't know. Because TV's finally transformed where it's not nearly as encumbered as it used to be, right? Like now, like budgets are better.
Oh yeah.
If you're on Netflix or HBO, you can get away with a lot of content and stuff like that. So it's gotten a lot better, but still, I feel like quantity and quality. I still feel like we're being flowed way too much.
Yeah.
Like for no reason at all today, I was on MSN and I 21 shows that are debuting this fall, and I guess that's not even a lot, really. Yeah. There's probably more. This was just 21 facts. There's probably more than that. One of them has
there was probably that many or more canceled.
That kid. Remember that actor, the kid actor, Freddie Highmore?
Freddie who?
His name's Freddie Highmore. He was in some movies, and of course I can't think of what the hell they were. But he's quite young now. But he was like a kid actor. I'll find something he's in. More. Like he was the kid in the crappy Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake. He was in a movie called. He was in August Rush. He was in the movie called The Spiderwick Chronicles. Like I haven't really seen most of his movies, but I knew who he was. And the big thing was, he's Norman Bates now on Bates Hotel, right?
That's who that is. Yep.
But that just ended. It did 5 seasons and ended, which I guess is kind of restrained. But now he's going to be in a show that. I mean, this is only a small little synopsis I read that sounds exactly like Doogie Howser, except he's obviously a bit older. It's called like The Good Doctor, and he's a doctor. And I'm like, well, what else about the show? And I'm trying to. So then I'm like, what is this show? And I'm looking up The Good Doctor, and I can't get any information except that Freddie Highmore plays a doctor. I'm like, that's such a premise. He's a doctor, like, and nothing else. There probably is something else, but I couldn't find anything else about it. But yes, he's gonna be on a show called The Good Doctor.
No.
As Dr. Sean Murphy, but everywhere I've looked to find out what the hook is, there is no hook. He's just a doctor. Except, like, he's a smart doctor, I guess. Like, he's smart.
It sounds like so many other things that have already
Exactly,
happened.
Right? It's like, he's a young, brilliant doctor. It's like, wow, that's quite the show.
Probably has some love interest throughout the show. Or, I mean, of course he'll have some love interest, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Show like that has to have that.
Maybe the worst current example of things going on too long is Walking Dead. For God's sake, whatever impact that show could have had died years ago.
Yeah, I haven't seen the last half of the last season.
I mean, they had a season. I only saw the first parts the first 3 seasons. Like, and I, checked out after that, had no idea what was going on. But I know, like, one of these seasons started with, like, several of the characters being bludgeoned to death, like popular characters. Like, that's how they started the season. It's like, yeah, you've totally run out of stuff to do. But at the same time, I get why they did it, because those characters have become useless. There's no point to them anymore, so they might as well have killed them. As beloved as they were, they didn't have any point. Because this is what happens when you keep this whole zombie thing going. It's like, whatever made the characters compelling or interesting has worn off. It's like, yes, they're still in a shitty world, and they still have to do shitty things. Like, what more can you give us? You were visceral and surprising in your first, like, few episodes or seasons and stuff, but...
I mean that, but you want to talk about shitty TV that goes on too long, like what's the fucking doctor's show that has Dr. McDreamy and Dr. McSteamy on it?
I'm not good with TV.
Grey's
so
Anatomy.
I don't... Okay, that's still on, huh?
Yes, I say that every year. That shit's still on.
Because, yeah, I remember, like, in 2005, that was, like, the hottest thing ever. And now you think, that was 2005. I remember Grey's Anatomy. There was an episode of Grey's Anatomy came out in 2004, 2005, and it had a song by the band The Fray called "How to Save a Life," and it ended and it was, I guess, a really good episode, and it had all the buttons. It had like one of these montages where it would skip from character to character, showing them being depressed about something while this song played, and that became the template for the whole show. Every episode ended with a montage of showing the characters in different places being totally bummed out about something while some, like, kind of sad song played. And, like, and I guess that's probably what they're still doing all these years later.
Yeah, I did watch the first season of that show with my fiance, now wife. So
was she into it?
She was, but I mean, I think like season 2, we both said this is stupid. Like, there was a part where Sandra Oh got hit with an icicle in the face or something like that. Like an icicle fell and stabbed her in the face. And we were like...
she's had an interesting career, Sandra Oh. She's a Canadian actress.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
She had that weird false start where it's like, she might be in movies. It's like, no, just once. They're like, okay, she's in Sideways and nothing else. But I've never been interested in... I mean, I know I'm not a show person anyway, but even if I was, medical drama is like really far down the list of stuff I'd be interested in.
Well, it's all been done before. Like, there's shows like General Hospital that's been on for like 50 years. Every plot line you can think of has been done.
Pretty much. I mean, again, just before Grey's Anatomy, the big one was House. House blew everybody's mind because he was mean. He was a great doctor, but he was mean.
Was that his thing? He was mean?
Well, that doesn't... Yeah, he was really mean.
Okay.
Like, even to the people whose lives he was in, he would often dead and insult them. And people loved it. The one thing I'll give him is that actor, Hugh Laurie, is one of the best American accents I've ever heard from a Brit. Oh, perfect. Never slips. Give him that great accent work.
So many great Brits with American accents.
The best.
Nurse Jackie is on Showtime still. It's like in 10th season or whatever, and the hook there is she's a drug addict.
Yeah, I remember her. She's off-putting. She's from The Sopranos, maybe.
Yes, very off-putting.
One of the worst movies I ever saw in theater, which was called Freedom Land. I can't think of her name, but yeah.
I'll say Connie.
Samuel Jackson's in it.
Oh.
Samuel Jackson's in it, which doesn't mean much because he's in everything. But I saw Freedom Land in theaters. My God, what a snore fest!
Oh man, it sounds
missing
awful.
Kids, and it turns out not missing. It's boring. It's the most boring thing ever. It's like, oh, kids are missing. Get to find the kids. Kids are dead, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're definitely dead.
Her name is Edie Falco.
It's kind of like, yeah, that's her name. Kind of like if you did Gone Baby Gone, but had like an actual plot. Baby Gone's interesting. It takes you around by the nose for a bit of a ride before it reveals some stuff.
For some reason, I watched that again not too long ago. It just takes you through the dumpster of Brooklyn, doesn't it? You're just like in the asshole of
everybody
Brooklyn.
in Boston. Everybody in Boston is the worst. Yeah, Boston are uneducated assholes. Like, I mean, part of it you get like why some of the people will be hostile to them because it's like criminal environment, beat their ass. But it would have been like if they went into a store and buy a pack of cigarettes, the guy would have like torn their head off. Like everybody was just so on edge. Everybody hated everybody. Like, hi, how are you? What the fuck does that mean? Like, what kind of people are these?
Yeah, that's was that directed by Affleck?
Yeah,
or just
that
was okay.
Casey Affleck. Or Ben Affleck directed it, but Casey Affleck starred in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like anything Ben Affleck's directed, and I don't hate on Ben Affleck. I like him fine, but I don't like anything he's directed.
Well, I mean that the one he won the Oscar for was way overrated.
Argo?
Argo, yeah.
Well, I'm mad at Argo because it's a fucking lie. Anyway. I mean, not to go all Canadian on everybody's asses, but that movie takes all the credit away from Canadians and made it look like it was the CIA's idea when it wasn't at all. But anyway, what was the other movie? I really don't like The Town because it doesn't make it. It's not realistic to me. I never bought like we've seen plenty of movies where, like we see cool by cool crews that have like amazing skills and amazing gear and stuff like that. We've seen that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work in The Town. Again, it's just it's like him and Jeremy Renner are two Boston morons, and they're pulling off these super sophisticated heists with all this planning and all this gear and stuff. And I just didn't buy it. A weird premise too.
They're all the same assholes from Gone Baby Gone too.
Yeah, pretty much. Like they take a woman hostage, and then it's like, but does she know who we are? I have to test it. No, I don't think she knows who I am. Oh, now I'm in love with her. The only thing I liked about Affleck was that Affleck was a former hockey player. He got drafted and everything, but then he fucked up or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize.
That's part of his backstory was like he was a hotshot hockey player in junior, and he was drafted by an NHL team, and people thought he was going to be a pro, and then he crashed and burned or something.
Yeah. Turned out all right for him.
That's what bank robber.
Oh, you're talking about in the movie?
Yeah, in the movie.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant Ben Affleck in real life.
I bet you Ben Affleck couldn't fucking skate. But in the movie, yeah, no, that was his character. His character was a hotshot hockey player. Since we're doing this, you know who was a hotshot junior hockey player a long time ago and was almost going to be a pro and then went in a completely different direction? You'll never guess in a million years. Evel Knievel.
Wow.
Evel Knievel was 2 seconds away from signing a pro contract with some minor league team about 2 levels below the NHL, meaning maybe he could have gotten there. Who knows? Nobody really knows how good he was. And then he's like, no, I think I'll be a crazy daredevil guy instead.
You got to have a backup.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. I thought The Town was okay. That's the one that I did actually enjoy. I mean, nothing.
I didn't dislike any of them. I just didn't like any of them either. I don't dislike Argo. I don't dislike Gone Baby Gone. They're fine watches.
Right, right. I feel the same way.
And Argo again pisses me off because that and it was funny too because when he accepted the award for it or whatever like that, he had to make this big side speech to kind of tell the Canadians yeah, I know what I did. I was just because people actually were kind of up in arms and about the time.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, again, he was. It's one thing to you make sort of dramatic changes if you're going to do based on a true story and stuff like that, but I don't know, sweeping under the rug somebody's brave contributions and moving the credit to somebody else is kind of a douche thing to do. And the worst part is how they stomp at it on the end too, because it's just nobody can know about this. This is super secret. We have to let the dumb Canadians take credit, and they have that wink moment where it's our ingenuitive or something like that. It's wink, wink. It's because they didn't do anything. It was all us. They even throw that in at the end of the movie, which is just a little too much. But anyway. But it's still, it's a well-made movie, well acted. It really looks like 1979 or wherever it's set. I give it the credit for that. But yeah, the Canadian ambassador was so brave in that, and they have him in it for 3 seconds. Because they went from various to various places in other countries, like the Australian ambassador and stuff like that. They were like, "Get the fuck out of here!" And they're like, "No, don't involve us." And I mean, I get it. I mean, it'd be a scary thing, but at least somebody stepped up. Anyway, that's the whole thing. Yeah, so that was Blowup, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. But I'm glad that our early technical difficulties seem to have worked themselves out. Sorry about the problems at the beginning. We'll see how bad it is when I rewatch the show later. Yeah. But yeah, a movie again that's more important for like some of its content and style than necessarily its story or anything like that. But as we said, the things it did as far as knocking down the walls, so that paving the way for American movies to show more nudity or sexually explicit things, and yeah, stuff like that. And sort of its cool, sort of slick style would influence some of the stuff you would see in the 70s, I think, later on too. But as we said, besides movies that are going to be next week, we'll revert back to another movie that's part of the actual movement. But we'll probably do about one or two more of those foreign films from around the mid 60s or so. Sure. that were definitely influential, because I don't know, they're interesting, and it's interesting to be able to talk about how, you know, you can see how it be incorporated later on in some of the American movies and stuff. And that's not to say that these American movies weren't original. It wasn't like they were taking ideas like they hadn't thought of. Mm-hmm. They were just finally being given the freedom to be able to do it. And you know, to a period, and it was finally where you would see a period that the thing sort of survival, the amount of creative control that some of these directors were given late 60s through into the mid 70s, where a lot of these guys, you know, or free reign than directors before or after they were given, and led to some really great movies. But of course, it also led to the fall. And later on, we'll do a movie around the fall, because yeah, we want to do the whole arc here and stuff. But so yeah, I don't think we finalized what next week's gonna be. All I can tell you right now, the American ones, one of the ones that is from the movement, and probably late 60s. We're not going to do 70s just yet. So it'll probably be, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s. One of those, maybe even one of the bigger ones like Midnight Cowboy or something like that. We will work that out. But at least give you somewhat of a heads up that it will be one of those movies, perhaps even one of the bigger ones. In fact, that you'd like to see us do, you can even maybe test. We'd be cool with that, because right now we're kind of a little undecided. Like, we think there's plenty that are worthy to do. We just haven't really worked out exactly what we wanted to do.
I'll tell you what, we could do a poll. We can do a poll and put it on the Twitter if you want to.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. Yeah, we could do like four of those.
Yeah, for, you know,
that one. It'll mix things up. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, so yeah, we'll try to put together a poll on the Twitter channel. We'll do about 4 of them. Those. And probably for the week after, we'll go into the 70s, and then we might go back to another of the foreign films. Again, we're not sure about the order exactly and stuff, but we're going to cover all these things. And again, towards the end, we want to do ones that are right towards the end of the era, and we can talk about how the era came crashing down, as these things do, because it's interesting stuff. But yeah, Blowup's definitely an interesting watch. Because it's more about the presentation and stuff, and sort of the character study and the idea of perception, blah, 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 the stuff we said, than necessarily solving any sort of mystery. Like, I remember I told my mother, asked me what episode we were going to do, and I told her about that, and I told her the plot, and she was like, "Oh, you have that recorded?" I said, "Yeah, I have it recorded." She said, "Don't talk it off. When I come up there at the end of the month, when we get you, because they're coming to, the month," said, "I'll watch it with you." And I'm thinking, she's going to like what my mother's like. My mother likes whodunits. My mother likes mysteries and stuff. Yeah. She thinks this is some sort of thriller where we can piece together the killer. And if she sees this movie right off as nothing, she's not going to be pleased. And work out, even if it's not much of a, but not for the truth thing. Yeah. So I'm that way too. Still like the movie, but yeah, if you're a person that like likes puzzles and mysteries like you, this isn't to be for that. But it's still a very cool movie for a lot of ways, especially if you just have an interest in, swing London it's the best example of a movie I can think of that does it directly, unless you want to see sort of a parody of it like Austin Powers did. But yeah, Austin Powers is definitely aping this for that, and then again, it's definitely an homage. He's doing the camera thing where it's like, oh, come on, baby, work with me and stuff, like where you get to see that towards the start of this. He's coaxing everything out of German model, and then working with the other models, he's just sort of treating them like they're objects and stuff. He's just like, oh, move over there. Yeah, it's funny. So it's an interesting performance for sure. Like, he's a likable character. He's an interesting character to watch, I think.
Oh yeah.
As with other characters and stuff, how they play off each other. Just sometimes what I really appreciate about a character is how different they are from myself. Because like, if somebody came to me and be like, "What were you doing taking pictures?" I'd be like, "Oh God, no!" And I'd run in there and blatantly, he just stand there and he's like, "Yeah, I took your pictures. What are you going to do about it?" I admire this, and I do. So yeah, I kind of admire him being an asshole, even though I shouldn't. But it's a movie.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Stay tuned to the Twitter, guys, and please vote for the film you'd like us to review next week. And we'll see you next time. We thank you for watching.
All right. See you next time on the Pocket Dimension. Have a good night. Peace.